We're doing a little show planning on the fly. At least I am. Morgan Streetman is always perfectly prepared, but we're going out there. Where are we going?
Well, and I just want to say, I have to take us out there because...
And if I don't do it, clearly no one else is going to do it.
Exactly. So if I don't take us out there, nobody's going to take us out there. And today we want to talk about the 5th anniversary, which is coming up this week on March 8th. The 5th anniversary. Can you believe this?
5 years already.
I know. The disappearance of MH370, that Malaysian Airlines flight that was flying from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia and supposed to be flying to Beijing, China. Mm-hmm. But then which was tracked, or at least we think was tracked, because they don't seem to be really sure of whether or not it was actually tracked by these little software. It was tracked going down into the southern Indian Ocean, they say. Now,
what happened?
We don't know.
We still don't know.
To this day, I don't know. No. I mean, it was interesting because I kind of did a retrospective on it, tried to see, okay, well, what's happened in the last 5 years? Well, they conducted a search for this thing for a couple of years, and they finally closed it down in January of 2017. That was conducted by Malaysia, China, and Australia, and they spent $200 million on that search. Then they hired a U.S. firm to come in the year 2017, and that firm is called Ocean Infinity, and they paid Ocean Infinity about $70 million. So there were supposed to be 239 people on board. And by the way, I understand that they're not, they're sort of fighting over paying compensation to them, but they've easily spent over $1 million a person looking for this plane, and we haven't found anything. And they say they found a couple of things, but we really haven't found anything. If you want to watch a pretty interesting retrospective, the Australian version of 60 Minutes last night actually ran almost the entire show on the MH370. Now, of course, our American version of 60 Minutes didn't even mention it, but the Australian version, and they pretty strongly are pointing the finger at the captain of the plane, that's Zahari Ahmed Shah, and are saying that this essentially was a suicide. Now, problems that I have with that are that he didn't leave a note or anything. So, I mean, if you were trying to commit suicide to make a statement or let everybody know how bad you were feeling or something like that, one, are you going to really do it where you kill 238 other people and take them with you? I mean, that seems to be almost a step too far because you're really switching over from somebody who's suffering with suicidal depression to somebody who's a homicidal maniac. And those are kind of two different states of being, at least I think they are. But, and the other thing that tells me that maybe the captain isn't involved is if 60 Minutes is saying that's what happened, then already I'm suspicious of it, okay, just to be honest with you. He also had some questions about the co-pilot, Farik Abdul Hamid, and whether or not he could have been involved because he had done some things previously, like bringing passengers up into the cockpit inappropriately that he wasn't supposed to do, and things like that. So it tended to show that maybe he wasn't following all the rules. But what's interesting about this is the transponder and other electronic communications were actually turned off. Now, what would cause that? Well, I guess apparently the pilot can turn them off himself or herself. That in and of itself is kind of disturbing, though, isn't it? I mean, why don't we have two transponders, one that the pilot can turn off and then one that nobody can turn off? Because we need to know where these planes are.
If you're going to kill yourself, why would you turn those off?
Yeah, well, I guess so the military couldn't track you and do what? Shoot you down? I mean, it's the strangest. There's something wrong with the story that this was some kind of suicide. I can't tell you what's wrong with it, but it's just not sitting well with me. It's not explaining this course of events. I mean, the plane could have been shot down. There could have been a catastrophic accident. There could have been a hijacking, or it could be pilot suicide. It could be any of those things and probably a few others that we haven't thought of, like, well, what if one of those lithium-ion batteries was in the storage compartment down under the plane and it actually caught fire on the flight? I mean, we've seen how those things can, basically go nuclear and could end up blowing a hole in the plane. So, I mean, there have been all kinds of theories about what happened to the plane. The point is that to this day, we have no idea. The thing vanished without a trace.
That's what's hard to believe. It's a big plane.
It's never happened before in commercial aviation that the plane has completely vanished without a trace. They have always found the wreckage. Always.
Clothing.
Seats.
Things float.
How about the seats, right, that float?
Right.
Yeah, the seat cushion, that's your
How
flotation
devastating
device.
for those family members, because all those people, and then they have to sit there and say to themselves, do you think they're still out there somewhere?
Well, and that's what they were
Are they
talking
being
about.
held captive somewhere? Are they,
Well,
what
that's what I'm.
is it?
Yeah, because there's some question: are they alive or are they dead? I mean, my goodness, do you think these people could be alive? I mean, I don't know. The Australian 60 Minutes sat down with the Malaysian Prime Minister and talked through this, and they're willing to continue the search, but nothing is ongoing at this time. But you're right; the families never get answers, and how difficult that must be for them. Now, the theories range from it crashing off the Vietnamese coast in the South China Sea to it crashing in Cambodia to it being flown south in the Indian Ocean, basically towards Antarctica, and crashing somewhere way far south in the Indian Ocean. And that would only be from a pilot suicide. Now, in 2015, a piece of the plane's wing supposedly washed up on Reunion Island, which is over by Madagascar in the Indian Ocean, so kind of getting near to Africa in the Indian Ocean. And then in 2016, another piece, which they say is confirmed, they've confirmed both of these pieces came from the plane. Another piece of the plane was found in Mauritius. Well, these are way far west. So either the ocean currents carried these things way, way far west, or he was flying somewhere further west than south. Now, interestingly enough, the base of Diego Garcia, the British base there out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, kind of on a man-made island, was just within range from where he was coming, so just within flight range. And, of course, there are some people who suppose, because this is documented, that there were 20 people on the flight who worked for a company called Freescale Semiconductor, and there have been people who have supposed that there's something suspicious about that many, and these were high-level people. Now, this is documented. Freescale Semiconductor agrees with the fact that the 20 folks that were killed on this plane that worked for them were very high-level engineers and people who were working on very important projects for Freescale Semiconductor. So there's a whole line of conspiracy out there that these folks were killed because they had just invented something that was about to be patented. Well, I can tell you, I checked the manifest, the flight manifest, who the passengers were, and I checked that against the people's names who were on the patent that they're saying was the reason that this all happened. And while a lot of the surnames were the same, so, for instance, you had a Wang, last name Wang on the passenger list, you had about 10 of them, and then a Wang on the patent, but their first names, their given names were different. So I don't see that any of the people on the passenger list were listed on this patent. So I tend to think that conspiracy theory is kind of a red herring. But it's just amazing to me that we don't know what happened. We still are no closer to figuring out what happened than we were when this happened 5 years ago. It's kind of like the Vegas shooting, and I just find that really fascinating. Folks, I'm Morgan Streetman. Thanks for joining us. That's the way I see it. Thank you for listening to the Morgan Streetman Show. We hope you enjoyed what you heard, and if you did, please click like and subscribe to help us out. And don't forget to exercise your brain at least once a week.